Okay, hello, welcome back to another video. Today we're playing e4 as per flipping usual. My opponent goes for a Sicilian defense. We're going to play a3, of course, the Mengarini, and go for b4 here against this knight c6. Pre-moving takes. I hope dearly that my opponent accepts my little wing gambit here. The Mengarini, of course, being a potentially vicious battlefield on which there are some very cool ideas. a6 though, I mean, that just sucks. Okay, you know what? Are they not letting me just take here? And then I can play d4 and hold on to this pawn. I guess the problem is if if bc5, then e5, I don't get this move d4. But if you play e5, I feel like you're drastically conceding this square, and I think I'm going to take this. I'm not quite sure if this actually makes a lot of sense. If you play e6 to maybe try and maintain some control, yeah, okay, fine, of the d5 square, then I could have played d4. However, they go e5 to prevent me playing d4 so they can recapture the pawn, but in so doing, drastically concede some holes around this king, potentially. Well, no, not really around the king, around the queen side at least, and especially on that d5 square. So I'm thinking that a relatively speedy knight c3, knight d5 could potentially pay dividends. I'm also just thinking that bishop c4 seems to make some sense. You know, they don't have a c-pawn, they've played e5 and extended the pawn past the e6 square, so it's going to be very hard to justify a d5 break. Not that they necessarily need to or even want to. However, it should make playing through the center a little more difficult and maybe give me this gorgeous square on d5 for my knight. However, apart from that, it doesn't feel as though I've got any kind of major advantage going on. Not that that's a major advantage, of course, but it seems at least reasonable. Do I want to play d3 to hold on to this pawn and open up the bishop, I guess? I think the answer is yes, but then what happens if you play bishop d4? It's a little concerning. I guess I have knight g2. Okay, we're fine. If bishop here, I have knight g2. I'm then threatening to just take this, and if you trade, of course, we can just take here. So yes, the dark squares look very weak right now. This b4 idea, I don't know, maybe wasn't the wisest. Or actually, no, of course b4 was the right idea, but maybe taking inwards wasn't the wisest. Maybe I should have just carried on developing and given them another chance to accept my gambit. They go for d6. I'm thinking I might go knight g2 anyway, just so that I can castle this way, and maybe there's an f4 break in the future. I could castle, play rook h1, have this f file looking interesting. Instead of getting in front of this pawn, they bring the bishop to e6. Okay, I mean, I could take. That does then let them defend this square with a pawn, and also I guess that gives them the open f file for free. I don't love that at all, really. In fact, I think that's quite terrible. But what other options do I really have here? I mean, I could just let them take this. I could just castle, and then if you take, I take. Then we have this kind of double outpost idea on d5. The point, I guess, though, would be that these are doubled and isolated, and that's probably going to suck. Oh, man, I'm not a fan of this position at all. Bishop here, they can just take, move the knight. So I guess, what, like bishop b3, maybe? Do you know what? I'm actually castling. I don't mind if you take here. This is very uncharacteristic. I don't really enjoy letting my opponent trade on their terms, and especially when it can damage my pawn structure here. But I think there's maybe an interesting argument to be made, and they don't even go for this. Wow. All I was really hoping for was just a complete dominion on d5. I'm going to play king h1. Why not? Let's step out of the way of this. I'm still going to give them the opportunity to take. It also makes playing b4 a little harder, at least. And I think I'm going to come forward like this. They do take now. Okay, sweet. And I just don't see how you immediately access these kind of squares. Now, of course, I don't want to hang this pawn straight away. Yes, I've got some pawn structural weakness, but this is a major hole. I could play f3 to then play this. I could just start with knight here, actually, and then maybe actually we're angling for that g3 square. Okay, sorry, not g3, that f5 square via g3. I really like this. We're going to hold this pawn. We're going to hop into d5. If you ever take, we're reconciling those damaged pawns, claiming a bit of a space advantage, etc. And actually, that f5 square is going to look wonderful for my knight, because if you ever play g6, you know, h6 all of a sudden looks kind of suspicious, and I think probably we're cooking something up here at least. I don't exactly feel as though I'm, you know, in my element here. I don't know why I took on c5. I had vague aspirations after e5 of somehow like getting a knight to b6, but clearly that was always going to be too slow. They were just going to take on c5 with the bishop nice and early. But I don't know. Knight f5 definitely makes some sense. My complete domination of d5 is extremely pleasant. There's even a universe where I just sort of play knight f5, maybe even bring the queen here, and we really look to just attack on the king side. Not even worrying too much about the whole d5 square. Okay, they do hop in. Now the point is we do have this c-pawn to eventually kick them as and when we wish. You know, that's the difference between me going into d5 and my opponent. You know, they don't have a pawn that could eventually kick me from here, so this is a hole. Should I choose to, could play knight here, and then an eventual c3. They'd have to move their knight out of this strong square and just go back, I guess, maybe to e6, which could be reasonable, but still not exactly d4. And the question is, do I want to go for this straight away? I feel like I do, because actually I want to go knight f5, and clearly I don't want to let them take. So we're going to go knight here. They don't have anything immediate with this knight. I think their idea was just to immediately prevent knight to f5, but I'm going for c3. I'm just getting rid of this. In fact, I'm saying that if I could choose to have this pawn on c2 or b3, I mean, b3 might look visually more appealing, one pawn island, you know, no damaged pawn structure. However, this would be a hole. And so having that kind of secondary c-pawn to get rid of this knight, to then maybe hop in here. Maybe we're coming out, you know, queen f3, queen g3, something like this. Or maybe we're going for like an f4 break, and then what the hell is that over there? Going for f5. Okay, I mean, starting with c3 for sure. Get out of here. Get out of my face. Yeah, this is, I mean, this is very telling here. Knight h7. There's no way they don't play f5. Although, why don't I just put my knight on f5 and say, it's a little more difficult to play f5 than I think you'd have originally thought. I mean, come on, look at these knights. This is looking pretty strong to me. Pretty strong to me indeed. And I think actually, weirdly enough, I mean, I hope the engine's a fan of bishop takes c4. I analysed a game kind of recently where the engine said the best move was to just allow the takes like this in a sort of vaguely similar way. I'm being very vague. This is not like remotely sort of prep in a specific position, but the idea feels vaguely familiar. And I remember thinking, that doesn't make any sense. But then actually thinking about it and being like, well, I get this complete, you know, domination of a certain square, etc. So I'm trying to employ something a little vague. If this was the correct move to allow bishop takes there and playing the way I have, then I'm very happy because it's not entirely intuitive to me, and that would suggest that maybe I'm learning how to play this game. However, my opponent is also putting nasty pressure on e4. I don't think a check particularly makes any sense yet. Honestly, just f3 to play h4 eventually might make some sense. Or in fact, I could just move the queen, because why not? Why would I not move the queen here to just defend this? I could play queen d3 actually to hold this, because then I'm also coming across to g3, which is precisely where I want it to be. An eventual h4, and then, you know, taking on h6, and things could get a little nasty there. If you go like this, I could probably just chop that off straight away. I seem to win a pawn there. I quite like queen d3. I think giving my queen mobility along the third rank while also protecting this pawn. There are a few things that make sense about this move. It also seems like there's something kind of wrong with playing f3 if I intend to play f4 at some point. I mean, sure, there could be a case made that it's necessary, but if it's not necessary and I can do this defensive job with my queen, then, you know, why sort of waste the tempo of trying to go f3, then f4? Maybe I'll just play f4 in one fell swoop. Now they move the king. Probably they intend to kick my pony. This is looking likely. Do I go for h4? I mean, your knight was going to go there. That was where your knight came from, I do believe. So where precisely do you see yourself retreating here? I think it's just h4 time. Now, things could get complicated. h4, g6. I take, you take, I take, Jesus. But also this is hanging and I've got a potential discovered like check threat and like taking here. Okay, honestly, I'm kind of just trusting the process with the move h4 here. I don't see how this can be a bad idea. The knight has no retreat. g6 seems like the right kind of counterplay to at least try, but you end up kind of opening up the queen to where this king is, I think. Maybe, maybe not. Not quite sure what's going on here. But what I am sure of is that you should check out the Patreon. Link is in the description. If you enjoy these kind of games and you enjoy these videos, what a smooth transition, by the way, then you'll most certainly enjoy the Patreon. It is the best way to support my channel. I would be exceedingly and eternally grateful if you would see if it tickled your fancy, perhaps. Anyway, I'm sure the people already there can attest. I also should address that I've changed the background because Lichess was bugging out, and for some reason I wasn't able to get my normal Magnus holding a brick, Paul Morphy, Magnus and Shaquille O'Neal background going on. I've got this quite pleasant ocean shenanigans going on here. I might change this, I might not. I've got no idea. I should probably take this knight. You take, I take. I mean, this was what I sort of vaguely calculated, and it seems like it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's some case to be made to take here, here, here. I don't really believe it. Right, let's just grab this. I think you have to take my knight. I mean, you clearly have to take my knight, else you're just down a bunch of material. But then when I take here, my case is that I'm threatening check, but you can take this. But I still threaten this check. But then you play this. Oh, God. I should have calculated that way more than I just did. I put zero time into that whatsoever. However, f6 with a discovered check disconnects the queen from being able to access, you know, this general area of the board, which I think is super, super relevant. Now, I'd imagine e4 is almost certainly the move. However, it seems that probably we're putting on the right kind of pressure here. Probably we've got kind of a bind on this position where this pawn can't be pushed, the queen can't make it over so easily. I probably had more there, actually. I don't know. Okay. They don't play this, they just step back with the king. That seems insane to me. Don't I just have bishop g5 and then queen h3 and queen h6 and mate? Huh? Bishop g5, hg5, queen h3, king g8, queen h6. Hell yeah, right? I mean, this pawn's so strong. I'm almost certain that's just forced mate. I don't see what you do there. If you take this, you get hit with the check. That's your only legal move. Queen h6. King can't move. You have no checks. If you take this even to try to sack, this is just mate in one, taking with the knight anyway. Fantastic. Okay, they definitely should have tried something a little more resilient there. We now do, of course, get to take this. I'd imagine they've now realized this problem with queen h3, queen h6, and that disgracefully beautifully placed pawn, which, by the way, is only so beautifully placed because of this knight in this hole, justified by this pawn. I think maybe this was a good game of chess. Yeah, so they just moved the rook, but now I can take here, and surely I'm going bishop g7. Do you know what I I mean? How can I not be going bishop g7 here? The fact that this is held is just, oh, and they've resigned. They resigned. I'm kind of upset that they resigned, actually. We could have had way more fun with that. But +6 elo. My elo is looking fantastic. 2265 now. If I can add 6 to 2259. It was an embarrassing amount of hesitation. I don't know if it came across in my tone, but mentally I went, hold on, I hope I've got this right. I am 2 months from graduating with a first-class maths degree. Let's analyze that game. Oh my lord. Okay, so here we are in the analysis. 2 blunders, which clearly, okay, knight g2 and also king h1 were both blunders somehow. I mean, these were fairly significant blunders as well, but just not punished by my opponent. We'll see how obvious the punishing ideas were, but then from the point where they played h6, this was just a fairly clean conversion to an obviously completely crushing position. So we'll see where those blunders lay. I really hope they weren't obvious. Okay, e4, a3, flipping out, I forgot to start with a Mengarini. This is so uncharacteristic of a Mengarini. They play e5, knight here. Oh, okay. Bishop c4. I mean, this was all reasonable. There's not a whole lot to say about this. I guess the approach of taking the pawn was kind of dumb. I could have very easily just gone knight f3, which, yeah, is precisely what the engine wanted me to do. Just knight f3, I can break with d4. You're probably forced to either take this or sort of take in the center and just give me this kind of structure, which seems pleasant. Maybe there's b5 at some point. I don't really know. But taking was a little dubious. Going for d3. This is then just a blunder. What the hell was their move? Hold on, can I find it? Oh, wait, there wasn't queen like a... No, because I surely just have bishop d2. They have some knight g4, maybe? It doesn't seem obvious to me. If I flip the board, maybe. There's a tactic here? Am I being stupid? It was knight g4. Okay. I mean, I suspected it might have been knight g4. What's the... Oh... Okay, yeah, I just castle and then probably queen h4, right? Yeah, absolutely queen h4. And that's majorly... I should have seen that. That's a pretty common pattern. Going in with the knight and then castling as a defense, not being so effective, queen h4. I played this, or rather if I'd played this, then you can just nab this and presumably take here. And at this point, I mean, yeah, you're only really up 1 pawn, but it's going to be very hard for me to castle. And yeah, stuff just really sucks. Okay, so I'd assume maybe that knight g4 was the other blunder as well. No, it wasn't. Okay, yeah, not fantastic stuff. Castles. Going for this king h1. What the hell? Takes was correct. Damn it! So rather unfortunately, it seems that the idea that I was prophesizing could be genius was just foolish. I think I got overexcited. Oh no, hold on, it's just because of knight g4 again. Okay, and they could have played knight g4 here, so the fact that this was the best move wasn't actually the punishing idea. The idea was that they just had knight g4, so yeah, okay, I missed knight g4 twice, and so did my opponent. Point is, they're going in here, and I guess either I play bishop e3, and then after takes, I get forked, or, you know, queen h4 is coming in. The best move is ostensibly knight f4. What the hell? Oh, actually, that's pretty cool, because I guess I go here. And if you take here, and then I get to go into d5 with this. I mean, okay, yeah, I'd have just lost an exchange there. I just missed knight g4 being potent like a bunch of times. I generally don't play these kind of setups, and I just generally castle queenside, to be honest. So yeah, okay, I mean, apologies if you guys sort of saw that and thought it was obvious. However, from this point onwards, I believe, yeah, they missed knight g4 a couple of times. That idea should have been more obvious. Yeah, this is marginally embarrassing. However, knight g3 then made a lot of sense. Going in here, kicking that knight with c3, fantastic. Knight f5 was lovely. Queen d3, I could have gone for... Okay, engine prefers queen e2, so I guess kind of the same idea to defend with the queen, but I don't know, I thought coming across maybe along the 3rd rank made sense, but apparently not. Maybe there was something eventually assailable about my queen on d3, like maybe this worked to sort of give up a pawn but survive a bit longer. Not quite sure. However, queen goes up. They then, of course, occupy that square with their king, and then h4, we take here, and then takes here was correct. Wonderful. Give the check. I mean, yeah, I think just the fact that the queen was so locked off here, and the fact that we just dominate this, the knight being in here, this is very nice. They definitely should have gone for e4, right? Yeah, for sure. e4, and then either I play something like queen c2, keep an eye on this, which probably makes a lot of sense actually, and I'm just threatening to remove, and then take this, I guess, like rook here. I could probably take, and I mean, there are even ideas to just try and get my rook on the file, but also just rook ae1, and I just go after this, and clearly my opponent's in a bit of a spot of bother, let's say. Instead, of course, they go back, then simply removing this, the idea being that should they take, we would go queen here, only legal move, and then I believe queen h6, and yeah, absolutely, as you see here, mate in 1 is unstoppable. We could just pre-move queen, no, we couldn't pre-move queen g7 because they could sack here, but if they did sack here, let's say, like queen takes f6, then this is mate anyway. And you know, if they sort of venture off too far this way, we also have a cool checkmate here. So that would have been a forced mate in 1. Instead, once we'd taken the knight, they just shifted the rook over, but then bishop h6, and I mean, you know, I don't blame them for resigning here. I don't know exactly what you were going to do. Rook g6 is ostensibly the best move, but even then, like queen h3, I have bishop g7. I could go bishop g7 straight away, you go into here, queen h3, and then, you know, you're forced to sack the rook. I can go here, you're probably forced to take this, and okay, like queen g4, maybe you move, and apparently just f4, and sort of like break this stuff open. I mean, clearly I'm winning here. I'm up like a full rook, and this king sucks. But instead of choosing to play on, which would have been enjoyable, I'm slightly upset that they didn't. However, the resignation here is kind of indicative of how terrible of a position this was for my opponent. And yeah, we secure the win. Nice. 22.65 is looking beautiful. I mean, dare I say that 2300's on the horizon? I don't know. In fact, there's a goal that I'm going to make public now, I believe. I'll also cover this in a future video, but if I go onto my my rapid elo here and I just scroll down, you can see that my highest rating, I believe you can see this, yeah, you can see it. My highest rating is 2311. Now, this is not a legitimate highest rating. This was achieved on the day or maybe like a couple days after I made my Lee Chess account, just over 3 years ago now. And effectively, you know, while you're settling and you gain like plus 200, minus 200, when they have no idea how good you are, so you're sort of, your like volatility metrics really high or whatever. During that process, I won and got to a rating of 2311 and then immediately went straight back down. I mean, you can see that it started very high and then went kind of down, and by May I'd settled around 2000, and then, wow, what happened in April 2023? If you sort of map from May here to April here, I mean, I haven't made a load of progress, but to be fair, chess has not been my academic focus at all. That's massively been my degree. I'm very excited to start studying chess properly in a couple months or so. But my point is that this is a fake peak elo. This is not a true peak rating, and it's annoyed me perpetually that 2311 has been my peak rating for the last like 3 years. So in much the same way that people do like Road to 2000 series or whatever, I might do a Road to 2311 series as an oddly specific but clearly contextually justified goal to finally attain the nonsense peak rating that was set on the 30th of March 2022 in this game, which was just complete nonsense. It was a Frankenstein Dracula gambit that they just blundered. I didn't even play correctly. Here you're supposed to play bishop takes here and then queen f3 and you're hitting this and also the mate threat. But you know, I took this, then went for h4. What the hell? h4 and queen and then queen. Yeah, I don't know what I was doing. But anyway, look out for that. That might happen. And all I'm saying is that, you know, with 2265 on the elo, we seem to be edging close to making that possible. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Check out the Patreon if you're interested. I would massively appreciate the support, and also hopefully you'd enjoy what's on there. There are, I believe at the time of this video's release, 7 brand new exclusive Will Taylor Chess videos of the highest caliber, all instantaneously accessible. Go check it out. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.